The Galactic Council's emergency session had been called to address what they termed the human problem. Ambassador Vexitar of the Crystalline Collective tapped his translucent claws against the podium, his voice resonating through the vast chamber filled with representatives from 47 different species. "The humans have done it again," he announced, his tone a mixture of exasperation and disbelief. "They've domesticated a void stalker." A collective gasp rippled through the assembly. The insectoid delegate from Kepler 442 clicked its mandibles nervously, while the ethereal beings from the Andromeda spiral flickered with what could only be described as anxiety. Even the usually stoic rock people of Titan's third moon shifted uncomfortably in their reinforced seats. "That's impossible," wheezed the ambassador from the methane colonies, his breathing apparatus hissing with agitation. "Void stalkers are apex predators. They're living nightmares that exist in the space between dimensions. No sentient being has ever survived an encounter with one, let alone what?" interrupted Captain Sarah Chen, the lone human representative as she stood from her seat. Her voice carried the kind of casual confidence that had become synonymous with her species across the galaxy. "Let alone given one belly rubs and taught it to fetch?" The chamber erupted into chaos. Various species began chattering, hissing, and communicating in frequencies that the universal translators struggled to process. Captain Chen waited patiently, her hands clasped behind her back, a slight smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Ambassador Vexitar slammed his crystalline gavel against the podium, the sound reverberating like a bell through the chamber. "Order! We must have order!" When the noise subsided, he fixed his multifaceted gaze on the human. "Captain Chen, perhaps you could explain to the Council how your species managed to domesticate a creature that has terrorized spacefaring civilizations for millennia?" Captain Chen shrugged, a gesture that had become her trademark in diplomatic circles. "Well, Ambassador, it wasn't really that complicated. We found it floating near Europa's orbital station, looked pretty hungry and lonely. My colleague, Dr. Martinez, thought it might be injured." "Injured?" The delegate from Proxima Centauri's voice cracked through his translator. "Void stalkers don't get injured. They are pure, predatorial instinct wrapped in shadow and malice. They phase through solid matter and feed on the life force of—" "Yeah, about that," Chen interrupted again, this time pulling out a small holographic projector. "Turns out they're actually quite social creatures. They just needed proper socialization and a consistent feeding schedule." The hologram flickered to life, showing footage from the human research station. There, clear as daylight, was a void stalker, a creature that looked like a cross between a panther made of living darkness and a tentacled nightmare from the deepest ocean trenches, playing fetch with Dr. Martinez. The creature's multiple eyes, each one supposedly capable of driving lesser beings mad with terror, sparkled with what could only be described as joy as it bounded after a glowing ball. "You see?" Chen continued as the footage played. "We discovered that void stalkers are actually pack hunters. They've been alone in the void between dimensions because their species was nearly wiped out by some cosmic event eons ago. They're not malicious, they're just scared and hungry." The hologram shifted to show another scene. The same void stalker curled up in what appeared to be a specially designed bed, purring in a frequency that made several of the council members' teeth ache. Dr. Martinez was gently scratching behind what might have been ears, if ears could exist in 17 dimensions simultaneously. "We named him Shadow," Chen added helpfully. "He's quite gentle once you get to know him. He even learned to use a litter box, though we had to design it to exist in multiple dimensional phases." The crystalline ambassador's form flickered with what his species displayed during extreme stress. "Captain Chen, you must understand our concern. For thousands of years, void stalkers have been the bogeymen of space travel. They've destroyed entire fleets, consumed the life force of countless beings. Because they were starving," Chen interjected, her voice taking on a more serious tone. "Look, we've studied Shadow extensively. These creatures don't actually feed on life force. They feed on a specific type of quantum energy that's naturally produced by contentment and social bonding. When they attack ships, they're not being malicious. They're desperately trying to absorb any trace of happiness or companionship they can find. She paused, letting that sink in. The reason they seemed so terrifying is because they were literally dying of loneliness. The chamber fell silent. Even the usually chattering gas beings from the nebula cluster had gone quiet, their forms barely visible as they processed this information. Dr. Yathara, the renowned xenobiologist from the academic worlds, raised a tentacle. Captain Chen, are you suggesting that the solution to one of the galaxy's most feared predators was friendship? Chen grinned, that peculiarly human expression that had puzzled alien species for decades. Pretty much, yeah. Though I should mention that Shadow did try to eat Dr. Martinez the first time they met. But once we figured out how to properly feed him, turns out they love this quantum energy signature that gets produced when you play. Classical music to them, he became the most loyal companion you could ask for. The hologram changed again, showing Shadow performing what appeared to be tricks, phasing through various objects on command, and even what looked suspiciously like him playing a complex game of three-dimensional chess with Dr. Martinez. The council must ask, wheezed the methane colony delegate, what do you intend to do with this pet? Well, Chen said, Shadow's been asking if he can visit his home dimension to look for other survivors of his species. We're planning to help him establish a rescue and rehabilitation center for traumatized void stalkers. Dr. Martinez thinks we might be able to help them reintegrate into galactic society. She paused, then added with characteristic human optimism, who knows? Maybe in a few years you'll see void stalkers working as therapy animals on space stations across the galaxy. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of Ambassador Vextar's crystalline form creaking as he leaned back in his chair. Finally he spoke, his voice carrying a mixture of resignation and grudging admiration that had become the standard response to human achievements. We should have known, he muttered. Of course the humans would domesticate the undomesticated. Of course they would befriend the unfriendable. He looked directly at Captain Chen. What's next? Are you going to teach quantum parasites to knit? Chen's grin widened. Funny you should mention that. Dr. Patel in our biology department has been working on a fascinating project involving symbiotic quantum organisms. The collective groan from 46 different species echoed through the chamber as the Galactic Council realized that, once again, they had severely underestimated humanity's capacity for turning the impossible into the inevitable.